business tips to successfully start and run your business so your business doesn't run you. And more importantly, we provide personal development tools to create a better version of yourself to provide the solid foundation for your life and business to stand upon. This is the Biz Reveal, and I'm your host, Craig Sawyer. This week's episode is sponsored by Copper Coast Gourmet Coffee. When fresh matters, check out their full selection of flavored, blends, and single origin coffees at coppercoastgourmetcoffee.com. With over 14 years in staffing and recruiting, Suzanne O'Brien-Justice has successfully led very high-performing sales and recruiting teams for some of the largest staffing companies in the world. Suzanne brings her insights in hiring trends and effectively building sales and recruiting teams. After the show, learn more at www.blakeryan.com. That's BLAKERION.com. This is the Biz Reveal podcast with this week's guest, Suzanne O'Brien-Justice. Your niche is staffing and recruiting, right? Helping companies get the people they need to work for them, and hopefully good people that'll stick around and work well with the company, right? So tell me a little bit, like, how did you specifically get started in that business?
So I fell into staffing. When I was in my early 20s, I moved to San Diego and I did a sales job that was my first sales job where I sold websites to real estate agents in Florida. And, my sister was just getting into high school and I didn't want to miss prom and homecoming and all that fun stuff. So I decided to move back to Washington. And I had been licensed in real estate because my parents were brokers. So I was like, hey, I'll get a part-time job in between closings. And so I went to work for a dental staffing company as a part-time receptionist. And my second week there, their hygiene recruiter left. And I'd been kind of checking it out and was interested. And so I went to the owner, because it was a small family-owned business, and said, I'm really interested. I'd love to give it a shot. And luckily, she gave me a shot. And so that was my first recruiting job. And I grew the department to revenue they'd never seen. I ended up hiring someone underneath me. And unfortunately, I just got to a point where I'd hit the ceiling unless I purchased it. There was really nowhere else to go. And then I moved into a larger company, but I literally just fell into it. I didn't even mean to.
and was that the 90s?
Oh my gosh, the 90s. I'm not that old.
Oh shoot! Did I just make a big boo boo? This is one of those things. Edit, back up.
Right.
The reason I ask is I know you said something about like with the internet and everything before we got on to the show itself. So I wanted to ask you kind of like how things have changed from when you first started doing it to how they actually are now.
I know that's crazy. So when I had my first sales job, the internet had just come out, and that does make me sound very old.
See, that was the 90s, right?
People used to say, "Oh, that's never going to stick around. It's just a fad," and here we are. No, it's really changed. There's a lot of technology that goes into stuff now, and I think it's a good and a bad thing. I think the good part is it can streamline some things. I think the bad part is when you use too much of it, you lose that personal connection, that partnership, that relationship building piece. And that's something that I really try to focus on with my teams and our clients is the best of both worlds. So, and it's also something I try to educate my clients on when they're looking for people, because, some of them use applicant tracking systems, some of them use different systems and algorithms that pick out keywords on resumes for what they're looking for. And so there are those times where you're missing out on great candidates because their resume doesn't necessarily fit into that.
Like they're too dependent on the technology and fall away from the basics. When I was in the Marines, that was one of the things that they train you on is it's great to have all this technology, but the technology doesn't always work. So what do you do at that point? So it is nice to at least know what some of the basics are, without using technology. So it was done before, and obviously lots of businesses succeeded doing it before.
Yeah.
So I guess let's start at the beginning. So when you first started doing that, what was the typical process of onboarding or recruiting? Let's start with recruiting first, because onboarding is a completely separate thing. But when you recruited back then, how did that start? What was the process?
Well, that's back when, Monster.com was really big and they were just coming out with all their services around resumes. and then Career Builder as well. And so that's really what it was. I mean, the main technical part was just sourcing through those resumes on those platforms. But then it was old-fashioned cold calling. You were on the phone, I mean, probably 6 hours a day, whether you're calling candidates and leaving messages or, cold calling clients to see if they have referrals, people they may know who are looking, which is always a great market to tap into. But it literally was just going through resume by resume by resume and just reaching out and trying to schedule those conversations about, what those candidates were looking for and then what we had available.
So fast forward 20 years. What's different from then to now? What's the biggest difference you can point out from then till now?
I think honestly, the biggest difference would be LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn has really changed the hiring game, mainly because it's such a great platform to find those passive candidates, which is what a lot of clients are looking for, especially with very specific niche or high level roles. And I think that we never really had a platform like that. So LinkedIn, I think, has really changed the recruiting game a lot.
And you said for passive candidates, that right? So is that the people who aren't looking for jobs, but if you approach them and the right opportunity comes in front of them, then perhaps they would be willing to take a look at it?
Exactly.
Awesome. Are there any other sites? Because I've been on LinkedIn for many years and it's been pretty useful for me. I don't do it for recruiting purposes. I do it for, lead generation and things like that. But are there any other sites that are, because I haven't found any, that are similar to the way that LinkedIn works? I haven't really seen any direct competition for LinkedIn.
I think there are some smaller ones, but they're very niche around, like I've seen ones around like college students or specific like healthcare. There's some healthcare ones, but no, I think as an overall platform, I think LinkedIn has really cornered the market.
Wow.
And it is surprising though that there isn't anything else that's come out that's been similar. I'd be curious to see in the next 5 to 10 years if somebody does launch something similar.
I would like to see it. Because competition is always good, no matter what you're doing. Competition is always a good thing. And I think it would also bring up some new ideas, right? Because LinkedIn's LinkedIn. I mean, they do what they do, but if you have somebody who's competing, they might see something that can be done differently and maybe better, maybe worse, who knows? So using LinkedIn, when you're out there trying to find those passive candidates, what's the process? Are you like doing the search words for, certain types of people that you're looking for, and then you're kind of browsing through them?
Yes. I mean, basically what I do is, let's say I'm looking for an HR manager. I type in HR manager, and then I like to look at if my clients have a specific competitor. I always ask them, like, what are your top 3 competitors you would want to pull someone from? And then I'll just search through that company and see if there's anybody that matches or is similar. And I do that consistently, and that's how my team sources on there as well. And then you just reach out and say, hey, I have this really great role. I'm not sure if you're open to new opportunities right now, but if you are, I'd love to connect with you.
Yeah, and I like that. That actually leads me to one of the questions I had written down here for you. Because I've tried this and my office has tried this. Have you ever tried recruiting people that were in a completely different industry, or maybe they were responding to job postings for something that was completely different, but that a person who would respond to those job postings may have the same type of attributes that you'd be looking for yours? Have you ever tried to pull them from one industry into another because of some of those personality traits or attributes they might have?
We have, and it's interesting because that's where you really try to talk to the client about transferable skill sets and being able to find, somebody who maybe doesn't have the exact title on the resume or doesn't have the exact job description, but they have skills that will fit into that. So, for example, you saying you're a Marine. My grandpa was actually a Marine too. But vets, like there are so many vets out there who learn such amazing skills and then come back and they have those transferable skills that they can fit into all these different roles. So it's being able to talk to the clients and really explain that to them and try to tell the candidate's story around, how they're valuable and what they can bring to the table versus maybe the kind of box, if you will, that you're looking into.
Right. And I'm in health insurance sales. And, it's a commission job, right? We're all independent contractors, things like that. So we've actually looked into people who are servers, bartenders, waitresses, waiters, things like that, because they're in the service industry, which is what we do. We serve people and try to help them get into new plans and things like that. And they're used to working on tips with lower hourly wages. So being on a straight commission job they might be somewhat used to it already. So that was one of the things that we had tried for a while, and it has worked actually pretty well. And so that's why I wanted to ask him, like, is this something that, we kind of just fell upon and gee, we think we're something special and we came up with something new, but it might be just something that is used. When you're approaching somebody, or let's say you have a job posting out, you're looking for somebody specific for a specific role. What are some basics for building the actual job description post?
I think there's a couple different ways you can do it. You always want to be very clear and concise. You don't want it to be too long. It's kind of the same with resumes. You don't want to send someone a 6-page resume and think they're going to read all of it. Same with the job posting, right? It needs to have just really 3 big main components. Who you are, what you bring to the table as an employer, what you're looking for as far as job duties and requirements, and then the benefit piece of it. So what else are you offering the candidate? So they get kind of a sense of your overall package. Because a lot of times now, it's not really just about salary. A lot of candidates want to know, what is your full package? What are benefits? What are vacation days? What does it look like for PTO? All the gamuts of it. So I always say, keep it short, keep it concise, but enough that people understand what it is you're looking for, and it piques enough of their interest. We have, clients who have these really long job descriptions, and I tell them, people aren't going to be interested. They're going to read a couple words and they're like, okay, move on.
The attention span's way too short for that kind of thing.
We're an instant gratification kind of a society. So it needs to be quick and move on.
Another question I had too, and you just touched on this, is it appropriate to always include the salary in the job posting?
I think it's always good to have a range. But then I also tell people it's always good to say, there's some type of flexibility around it, or negotiable, depending on, the candidate's experience. Because what you don't want to get a really experienced candidate to come in and say, oh, well, this is what they say their salary is, and most likely they're not going to move from that, so I'm not going to bother. Right. So it's always good to say, a range, and then say negotiable.
Okay.
And depending on experience, it's always a good one too.
And you just had to include, like, if you have a benefits package, health insurance, or, vacation time, paid time off, things like that, that you should include those, because that's what's separating you from potentially your other competitors that they might want to go to. And
I think in your industry too, one place you guys might want to look is high-end retail. If you're looking to hire people. I
hadn't even thought about that one. Why would that be?
Yeah. Because they have the very high level of customer service, but then they also they're used to working hard, working longer hours, and not having the high hourly, but they get commission. So they're compensated on how hard they're working and how many customers they're touching. But again, they have that training of that high level of service.
That actually makes sense. I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah. Because, we typically think, like, when you're retail, you're getting a base salary or base hourly wage. And that's, people spend what they make, right? I mean, that's part of the problem with money. No matter how much money you have, you're always broke because you spend what you get. But, people really like having that dependable paycheck coming in. So it is hard to persuade somebody to leave something where they know they're getting a certain amount, whether it's enough or not. They know it's coming in, and then you go to a commission-only job. It's a little difficult for people to swallow because, if you don't make any sales, you don't make any money. I mean, real estate is the same way, right?
I agree.
So what are some methods for determining the right type of candidate for a position? Like if somebody is a small business owner, they're just now getting to the point where they need to hire employees, right? They've been a one-man show, and now they're like, I'm doing awesome, but I can't do it all anymore. I need to hire people. What's the best way to determine what type of person they want or need?
I think that's tough because it depends on what role you want to start with. So it depends on if you want to bring in what type of business you have. If you want to bring in a salesperson, or if you're looking to bring in an operations person or administrative, it really just kind of depends on what you're looking for. I think, when and being a small business owner myself, I've gone through this too, where, I've had team members that have come on and unfortunately funding ran out, or, sometimes we've hired people who are commission only, and totally understandable. They just can't do it after a while if they're not closing anything. And so I think it really just kind of depends on what your needs are. And I always tell clients, hire from the bottom up, because you don't want to go and hire a manager who just wants to manage. And then you have that middle part where you have all the people who are doing what you need to get done, not there. So it's always better if you hire from the bottom up. And then you also get those people who are really invested in your business. And they know that they're coming in from the ground level. And it gives a lot of people a sense of pride and excitement, and a really good sense of belonging, because they're really helping you build something.
Yeah, and I think that helps build the culture too, because they become part of the company, not just an employee of. And it makes sense. If you're going to start from the bottom, it makes sense, because the first things that you're going to need as a small business owner is somebody to take care of those mundane tasks that, that you needs to be done, but it's not making you money, right? You want to get back to the things that you specialize in that actually make you the money. And, putting social media posts and stuff like that out, that's the mundane stuff that you would like to hire somebody else to do, right?
Copper Coast Gourmet Coffee. When fresh matters, we deliver it from the fields to the roasters and into your cup. CopperCoastGourmetCoffee.com.
I was thinking about that today, actually. I was like, I've done all these podcasts, and I have, my magazine articles that I do. And I'm like, I don't think I've really even promoted all of it yet. I need a social media person.
Yes. And I've had a couple past episodes, and actually some that are going to be releasing soon on that. And my God, there's so much to learn. And, a lot of times you can hire somebody, a virtual assistant to do those kinds of things. And it's very affordable. And then they can just take all that off your plate. But you have to learn how to do it first to be able to create, an SOP to be able to give to them so they know how to do it. But there's so much involved with doing that. But that's one of the places you could start, I guess, is hiring somebody to take care of your digital marketing stuff for you and take that off your plate, because it does take a lot of time, when you're trying to do it. It
does, and it's interesting. You figure out how to do it. Like I discovered Hootsuite, and that was super helpful because it shoots it out to all platforms at one time, so you're not doing it individually constantly. But then I was sitting there and I'm thinking, I feel like I should understand this more. I do.
Nothing makes you feel older than not knowing how to post on social media, right? And I'm not saying anything. I'm with you.
And it's funny because I was like, why can I not post on Instagram on my computer? I can only do it on my phone. Wait, I don't understand. I didn't even know that,
And it just seems like, and you have to do it, a couple times throughout the day. You got all the different mediums that you got to do. And, sometimes you didn't make comments, right? Because you don't want to put the info. Yeah. And I just learned this too. This is one of the things, and I'll share it on this episode too, because I think it's something everybody should know, is you should not put a link in your post, like your website or something like that, in the actual post. So especially like on Facebook, because they want you to stay on Facebook, right? That's how they get paid, is keeping people there. And if you put a link on your on the post itself and direct people away from Facebook, they're not going to give you the visibility that you are looking for, because you're directing them off. So you put that link in the comments and you say, please see the comments for, a link to our website or something like that. Yes. So there you go. Right. I'm helping you out now.
Oh my gosh. That's good to know. Yeah, I had no idea.
So that's one of the things that I, when I'm talking to folks on the podcast, it's great to learn those types of things, because you don't know unless somebody tells you, right?
No, I agree.
When employers are making posts, because I think it all starts there, right? You have to start with the post to pull somebody in. What are the biggest mistakes that you see?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Like, is there a commonality of things that employers are doing that you're like, oh, it just makes you cringe when you see them do it?
I think for me, the biggest thing is the post that the job descriptions where it has like 25 tasks in it, and then it has 35 required skills, and then it has certifications under that. And
just
then
being way too long. Okay.
It's just too much. And you get people who look at it and they're just like, it's overwhelming. I think too, with some clients, they tend to make it too vague, right? So there's like that happy medium in between. You don't want it too vague, or people don't even really understand what the job is, but then you don't want it so inundating that people get tired of reading it and just move on to something else and think it's just too much. I've seen some clients who have spelling errors
that's
or
the
missed
worst.
words. That drives me crazy. And candidates do it too on resumes, and that drives me nuts too. But I think those are probably the biggest things I've seen.
Unless you're looking for an editor. If you're looking for
exactly, there you go.
If you're looking for
and that would actually be
editor,
a really great idea for a job posting.
Yeah, that would be a good way to get attention, right?
Good one. Attention to detail.
We're just coming up with awesome ideas right now. I got to keep this going. I usually only do that when I'm drinking. That's so weird. When is an appropriate time, or is there an answer for that, for when a small business owner should start looking at hiring elsewhere for somebody like yourself to do the recruiting for them as opposed to trying to do it themselves? Should that start immediately? Should that wait until they have 10, 15, 20 employees? Is there a time frame there?
I would say, honestly, if you're asking me immediately, and again, not just because I'm in the industry, but because I'm a small business owner, I mean, even me, there are times where I'm just so busy, I don't have time to do it. And the problem that you run into as a small business owner is you typically are doing everything. So anytime that you take out away from those essential moments and those essential tasks, your business or your revenue can potentially start going down, right? So hiring somebody to come in and do that for you is going to alleviate that. It's similar to, a CPA. It's not like you're going to start your own business and then all of a sudden you're a CPA and you're so skilled and specialized in this, you're just going to go do your own taxes and everything, right? Absolutely not. There's so much that goes into it. And it's the same thing with hiring. I mean, there's so much that goes into hiring, and it's really time consuming. And you post a job ad and you get 150 resumes and 125 of them are not even close to what you're looking for. And now you've spent hours digging through 125 resumes. And then maybe 5 out of the other 25 are good. And then you're, chasing people to call them, and then you're scheduling interviews and it's just such a lengthy process. So bringing somebody in like myself to really streamline that for you and get you to the point where you're literally just doing an interview with the candidate. They've been vetted. We've interviewed them. We've done behavioral interviews, references, and you're just doing that final interview to see if they're really a match culture-wise for what you're looking for. It saves so much time, and it really helps from pulling you away from the things you should be doing, like keeping your business going.
And is it ever possible to get too many resumes for a posting?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because people think that in the market we're in, for example, unemployment is super, super, high, and that means all these people are looking for jobs, and I'm going to find all these qualified candidates. And actually, a lot of times it's the opposite of that, because you have so many people who apply and are not a fit for the role that you're looking for. So you're spending even more time just going through resumes. I've had clients tell me they've received, 200 to 300 resumes for a job posting, and they spent all the time going through them, and maybe 2 people were what they were looking for.
Well, could that also be an indicator that your posting might be a little bit too vague, too big? Like you might need to narrow down the niche a little more?
It could be, and it depends too on the level of the role. If you're looking for, a lower to mid-level role, I think you'll find that a lot more. If you're looking for obviously, a CEO or a director level, you're not going to see that as much because people tend not to just apply to those. But when you're looking for more of your kind of mid to entry level roles, you'll see that a lot.
So while we're talking about resumes, I got to have you resolve an office quarrel we got going on, an argument. So back when I was still applying for a lot of jobs, right? My, late teens, early to mid 20s, which, was only 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
You always wanted to have a 1-page resume, nothing more than 1 page. And I know that that's changed, or at least I've heard that has changed. What is the appropriate length for a resume in 2021?
I would say, honestly, I think 2 pages is a max. You don't need to go back further than that. You can summarize it. It's always good. And we talk to candidates about that too. We'll go through kind of, tips and tricks, or if we get a resume, we'll have them revise it, or we'll help them revise it. But yeah, I think past 2 pages, it's just too much. If you're going back 15 years, you can put the dates in there and just put the name of the company and the date range. If they have questions in an interview, they can ask you about it.
So you can list them if you think it's like something that might be relevant, but you don't need to put like a paragraph for each one of those older ones of your responsibilities. Just list the name of the company, your title, and the dates.
Yeah, most companies are looking at your most recent 5 to maybe 7 years of employment and how that experience is going to pertain to what they're looking for.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. Because I've seen some that are 4 and 5 pages long. And then I've also seen some that, were 1 page, but really needed to be 2. Like they were just really trying to pack a lot in there. Or on the other end, that they weren't packing enough in there. Like it wasn't telling you enough about them because they're trying to put so many different positions in that they really weren't telling me what they were doing in each position, which is the most important part. I don't really care so much about their titles. I care about the responsibilities that they were in charge of.
And people, candidates are realize too, that's kind of their first, initiation to a company, right? That's the first thing they see. So, what's it saying? First impressions are everything. That's kind of their first impression. So when clients see resumes and there's misspelled words or there's, spacing errors the first thing a client thinks is this person has no attention to detail.
Sure.
So it's really important to make sure that your resume is ready to go and you double, triple checked it before you send it out.
How do you feel about video resumes?
It's I don't know. I'll be honest. It's just such an interesting concept. But I think, I feel like I'm a little old school. So I kind of go back to like on resumes where people put their interests or groups they belong to. I always tell people, don't do that. Take it off because you never know. It could offend somebody, some person, And I feel like kind of with video interview or video resumes, it kind of gives more leeway into, not that this happens, but to discrimination. It kind of leaves it a little more open, I think, than if you have a resume and you just talk to a candidate prior to that. And I think there are a lot of different things that people could, maybe see and prejudge people by doing video interviews. So I'm not a huge fan. I get how, some companies really like it and you can see the personality and some people feel you can connect better with the candidate, but I feel like that's better used for like a Zoom interview.
Sure. And that's become so popular now too, obviously with COVID in the last year, doing these types of interviews. And that was another question I had for you is, obviously COVID has affected every aspect of life in the last year. I don't think there's any aspect of life that has not been affected by it, good or bad. And I think a lot of good things are going to come out of it. How has this process evolved in the last year?
I think Zoom has just, everything is Zoom, it seems like. Everything is video, which is great. I was never a huge fan of just phone interviews because I don't think you can really get to know a person or really their personalities can shine through. So I think, and obviously as a human, we connect more when we can visibly see each other and have that mutual interaction. So I think that it's great. I think it's amazing. I am all for Zoom interviews. I caution people on how they do their Zoom interviews. Don't do it in your car. Yes. If you are somewhere where you have service, or just schedule it for somewhere you can be. I've seen people do Zoom interviews in their car, which it just doesn't look very professional. You're still interviewing. You're still trying to make a great first impression with a client or a potential, job, hiring manager, HR manager, whatever it is. So really use it as like if you were actually going to an in-person interview.
And I have a personal story on that. When I was hiring for agents just a few months ago, probably 3 or 4 months ago, hiring for new insurance agents. And the guy took the call on his phone. And I had mentioned previously that you should be in front of a computer because I share my screen for some of the information on the position. Which, of course, on a little phone, you couldn't really see a lot of the information I was doing. And in the middle of me talking about some of the responsibilities for the job and some of the perks and the pay and things like that, he's ordering something like at a drive-thru, like a McDonald's or something. And so I was already a little turned off by the car situation because there's some background noise of the driving. I can hear his wife or somebody talking in the car. It just felt to me like the interview wasn't important enough for him to set the time aside in his schedule to dedicate just for that interview. So I like that you said, you should treat it just like you would an in-person interview. You're just in front of a computer as opposed to being in front of that person. So you should still dress nice. You should still put the time aside, make sure you don't have any distractions and things like that. So
I agree. And, I tell people that too. I mean, I get it that we're, a little more lackadaisical. You have the big companies where jeans and t-shirts are the normal thing. And I honestly, when I used to manage big corporations, my teams would say, well, why are you going into X, Y, and Z in a suit? They all wear flip-flops and we wear flip-flops. And I'm like, well, I don't wear flip-flops. I don't work there. I wear a suit. When I walk through a warehouse, I wear a suit. When I'm on an assembly line, I wear a suit. It's just, it's a level of professionalism.
And you're not going to offend anybody by overdressing, but you can certainly offend somebody by underdressing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I feel like we've just gotten so far away from that. And I think, people don't understand how important that is. And so when you do have people who are a little more lackadaisical and they're going into interviews, they're shocked that hiring managers are wondering why they look like they're in their pajamas.
Yeah. I always tried my best when I was interviewing, being the interviewee, not the interviewer, to try to match the dress, the attire of the person who is going to be interviewing me. And you should always dress for success. You can use that cliche, but you dress for the position that you want, not necessarily the position that you're applying for, but like your end goal. Where do you want to be? So, I mean, if you want to be a vice president of operations in 5 years, but right now you're at a, maybe barely entry level, maybe you should still dress like the VP of operations. That way people start viewing you as such, as opposed to, viewing you as the bottom rung. So, no, thank you for that, because like I said, COVID has changed everything. And I think there's going to be a lot of positive outcomes once we get past the actual virus part and just start moving on with life. And then the transition of things that were created and methodology of things that have come about because of it. I think it's going to be very good for us in the long run. And hopefully, I don't know what happened to Skype. Remember Skype was like the thing?
I just disappeared.
I don't know where it went.
And now Teams, I guess. Teams is coming out now. It's so funny. And I'll tell you too, it's again, I feel like it ages me, but I tried to do Teams with a client the other day and I sat in the team meeting for 30 minutes by myself. And then my client got back to, I'd sent a couple emails and she replied back to me and she's like, I was in the Teams meeting for 15 minutes. And I'm like, how in the world do we both log into the same meeting? We don't know we're there.
No. And,
so much that can happen.
There's got to be, some new technologies that are going to come about because of this, because now there's such a huge need. A lot of companies are not going to come out of this the way they went into it, right? They're going to come out of this like, this is how we're going to do things now. We're going to start using the technology. Yeah. We're not going to be doing so much of the in-person stuff because I think it takes more time, more effort. So, if you can just have somebody locked up in an office and every 30 minutes they got a schedule for an interview, they can just log on and get them done and knock them all out. You don't have to worry about them sitting in a waiting room and things like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how things change going forward. I'm going to like that. So we'll see how that works out. One last question for you. When recruiting, what are some of the areas that are forgotten? Like some of the places to look for candidates? Are there some areas that maybe people don't really think about that would be great places to go to look for candidates?
I think depending on the role, so for like entry level roles, there are a lot of really great college boards you can go to and a lot of like vocational schools that you can reach out to, and they'll let you post on their job boards, or they'll even let you go in and speak to their classes. If you're potentially hiring for different roles, I think those are really great places. We try to use those depending on the role that we have. I think, for other roles that would fit into it, I think there are a lot of programs that try to get vets back out to work, which I think are great. You can post different jobs on some of the different boards that they have in different areas. Obviously, they're all specific to their area, but I think those are really great. I think it's stuff like that people, they don't really think about anymore because you just think, oh, we have LinkedIn, we have Indeed, those are the big places we're going to go. I still post a ton on Craigslist. I know it's not as popular as it used to be, but for some of the roles that we do, Craigslist, we get more out of Craigslist than we do LinkedIn. So I think it's really role specific. Or I'd say actually skill set pursuits.
Yeah, LinkedIn would probably be more for the professional roles, and then maybe Craigslist for some of the less professional roles, maybe more entry level.
Like our hospitality, our property management. Yep.
How do you feel about job fairs? Do job fairs work?
I think job fairs are good. I think the only thing that you can run into is if, as an agency at least, is you have 15 other agencies there. I think as an employer, I think they're great. I don't know what in Florida, but in Washington, I know they do a huge one like once a year at the convention center, where companies can go in and talk about their different positions and give information out and really get to be in front of just hundreds and hundreds of job applicants. So I think it can be, it just depends on, what the job fair is and what you're looking to get out of it.
Okay. Because I know we still do a few here and there. But it's tough. Some of the ones won't let you in if it's a commission only job. A lot of times we like looking for, as you mentioned before, veterans, looking for former military personnel because they have the work ethic, and they want to apply some of those skills, and maybe they're retired from, the Air Force or the Marines or whatever the case is. And, but they're still only in their mid to late 40s because you can retire after 20 years. Right. But they don't want that grunt work anymore. They did it for 20 years and they don't necessarily want to work on top of a roof, putting shingles on, and they want an office job now, but they got that work ethic. They work hard. And I think that's a good place to go, is sometimes you can work with veterans organizations and, or for disabled people, find some organizations for that too, because if you have a position that doesn't need a lot of physical work and you have somebody who's physically disabled, that might be a good area for you to get into as well, just to try to get into that. And I think that works out well with, community service and things like that too. It looks good for the company. You're helping them. They're helping you. I think it's a win-win-win. So I think it works out pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. And we do a lot of, that's really important to me, is giving back. So every office that we have, or every city we have an office in, we do charity work, whether it's with, different corporations that help children. In Washington, we work with Sophia Way, which helps homeless women and children. I'm a committee member there, which they just do amazing work. And then I work with some organizations that get young girls into STEM learning. And so I think it's so important to give back to the communities that you're in any way you can.
I agree. And thank you so much for doing that. I think there needs to be a lot more of that. It's just a feel-good thing. It just really is a feel-good thing. Suzanne, that's all I've got today. So if you wouldn't mind, just take a minute or two here. Tell everybody who's listening, how they can get a hold of you, who you are, where you're at, where they can find you.
So we have 3 different offices. We have one in Newport Beach, California, Bellevue, Washington, Austin, Texas. You can reach us on our website, which is www.blakeryanconsulting.com. Ryan is RIAN. And we're on Instagram under instagram.com/BlakeRyan. LinkedIn, you can reach me under Suzanne O'Brien-Justice. And we're on Twitter under Blake Ryan. So we're all over.
Hence that social media marketing thing we were talking about earlier, right? Exactly. Trying to keep up with all of it.
I need help.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate all the tips and everything. And I hope we get to talk again real soon.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us this week. Go to our website at thebizreveal.com to catch all of our past episodes. We're available on all podcast apps, or you can watch any of our episodes on the Biz Reveal YouTube channel. I'm Craig Sawyer, and this is the Biz Reveal. Till next time.